What's up guys, Justin here with TheSketchUpEssentials.com. So in today's video, kind of a quick discussion. I'm interested to hear your thoughts on this because this is something I've heard in different areas where people think that artificial intelligence is going to somehow replace the need for rendering software. And I wanted to talk about this in this video and see if this is actually a possibility or if it's a claim that just doesn't really make sense. This is more of a discussion video. I'd love to hear from you in the comments down below what you think. But let's go ahead and just jump into it. Okay, and so I guess where I would start in this discussion is instead of like spinning out about getting things, people getting replaced and skills getting replaced and things like that, I think I would step back and say, what are we actually using renderings for? And in this case, I'm coming at this from more of like an architecture, engineering, construction standpoint. So obviously, if you're doing something like using artificial intelligence to convey ideas for like movies or other things like that, I think that's outside of the realm of this discussion. We kind of focus on the AEC for the most part here. And so what you do with both 3D modeling software and rendering software is the whole goal is to convey ideas to a client. Right? So you're creating a design, maybe not even just to a client, but to everyone that's working with you. So you're creating a design that represents something in the real world, and then you're using this to convey that information to either someone that's paying for it, or someone that's going to build it, or someone else that's working on the design. So in that situation, we kind of need to be specific with what we're showing. Now, let's start with ideation, because I think this is an area where artificial intelligence could possibly replace rendering software. So say that we looked at a program like VERAS AI, which we've talked about on the channel before. So it's a tool that allows you to really quickly use prompts in order to generate renders without having to create a whole bunch of detail, right? So huge time saver depending on what you're trying to do. So for example, you could use a prompt like one of these in order to create a snowy cabin in the woods, which is great. So you could use this in order to block out kind of some general shapes, other things like that, and then use a prompt to describe the way that you want this to look, right? Like snowy cabin in the woods, wood cladding, or snowy cabin, more modern with different kinds of materials, other things like that. So you can use this in order to create geometry that isn't there, at least in the 3D space. Now there are obviously limitations to this at the moment. So like, for example, we have a little bit of trouble being specific, right? So the quality of your prompts is really important. And when you do that, you know, you can use this in order to kind of like generate a space that you can then use to ideate and other things like that. Now, even at this early phase though, if you have a low level of detail and you want to go back in and make changes, this doesn't really allow you to do that. So the reason why is because the algorithm is currently looking at all of the stuff that it sampled, and I know people have different opinions about that, but it's looking at images that it's sampled and it's kind of like putting those all together into a data set and using it to generate an image. But what it hasn't done is it hasn't actually created or generated real geometry. Now, that may be something that's coming in the future, but at least at the moment when you do this, this is just taking your 3D model, taking a snapshot of it, and it's creating an image based on something that you describe, which, while interesting, isn't necessarily going to replace your 3D modeling software, and it's not going to replace your rendering software either. But it is definitely interesting. I think on the front end of projects, there's definitely a lot of value for artificial intelligence rendering software like this for ideation. The problem is, and I think it'll continue to be, that at least at the moment, the artificial intelligence is not actually generating geometry in any usable way, and B, it's not creating it in a way where you can go back and you can make changes, right? Like these are just pictures of something is what it's generating. So to me, that is not going to replace rendering anytime soon, right? But is there something that artificial intelligence could do later on that might replace rendering? Let's take a look. And so if you're familiar with this process at all, and I'm coming at this from a commercial construction standpoint, right? As someone who sat in owner meetings with larger commercial projects, the renderings are really used to communicate information about a specific design to a client. And so what that means is that everything has to be very dialed in. So for example, say that you have a house and you want to And so we're going to use a very popular house from the 3D warehouse. So say that I was to download this, bring it in, right? So we've got a specific 3D model. This is a layout of something that might be built in the real world. And this 3D model is something that you want to take a look at, let's say kitchen options, right? So we're going to fly in here like this, or we're going to look at different kitchen options. Your kitchen has already been designed. And so while artificial intelligence might be able to help you at some point actually like set up the casework in here and the way that it's laid out, in general, the design is already fixed, right? So you know that you want your cabinets to be this size. Well, now we're taking a look at some different things like materials, right? What might this material look like in different applications, other things like that. So what do? We take this model, we send it over to a rendering program, because a rendering program is going to give us a better picture of how this might all look. So let's say that I was to send this over to Twinmotion. Okay, and so let's say we take this model and we send it over to Twinmotion and say that we're looking at like countertop options, right? And obviously this doesn't look very good because I haven't done a bunch of work on it, but what we're going to do with the client is we're going to set up some different options for different countertops. So I might look at this granite right here, or this marble. I might look at this marble, and I'm going to drag different materials on here in order to visualize the way that those are going to look. This is something where we already have a fixed design, and we're just looking at options and visualizing options. So we've got this tile on the wall. Say that we wanted to look at another tile on the wall. Well, you're going to drag this in, and you're going to look at the way the tile is going to look on the wall. You might like it, you might not, but you can use this in order to take a look at those different options. So in this process, what we're doing is we're manually bringing in these materials. And I think this is kind of what people are talking about replacing, but I think they're skipping over the workflow. Like everyone is skipping over, I think, the fact that when you do this, this is something that you're doing in conjunction with someone else. It's a communication tool. And so everyone's saying that that AI might be able to replace rendering software in the sense that, well, you don't need it anymore to create amazing images. Well, the problem is within that process, the end result is something that is going to happen after you've had communication with the person that you're working with. So artificial intelligence can't replace that process of communicating back and forth. Now, is there a point where artificial intelligence might be able to completely generate the house design with materials, with other things like that? Possibly, but it feels like that's a long way off from what we have right now. So to me, the value of having a software like this is I can come in here and I can look at different options, communicate those different options, and then make decisions. And so the whole discussion of, well, do I need Twinmotion in order to do that? Can I just replace that with an AI software? I think that that discussion kind of misses the point of what's going on here, right? We are using this in order to ideate with someone else. A designer isn't working in a vacuum. Now, at some point, could there be an AI tool that says, okay, go in here and replace this tile with another tile inside of a program? I think that's a possibility, but I don't necessarily see the point to a certain degree. When you already have the ability to come in here and do this, it's a lot faster for me to pick a tile and place it in the rendering program and take a look at the way that it works myself, rather than telling AI to do that. Now, would AI be helpful maybe in putting together the lists of the materials that go on the wall and giving you options that you can then bring in? You know, could it be useful for setting up those materials and automating those processes? I think the answer is absolutely. But I don't think artificial intelligence is going to be able to actually replace rendering software or even really 3D modeling software anytime soon. I think what it's going to do is it's going to help us automate certain processes, which is what I want. Like, I don't want to have to go look for PBR materials. I want to pick a material off of the Home Depot website and have artificial intelligence get all of the PBR maps for me so that I can create this rendering. I want artificial intelligence to automatically bring those maps in and set them up. I don't necessarily want it working in the 3D scene. I want it automating the processes that are making me slower. I think that's where the value is going to be. And I think the people that are talking about artificial intelligence replacing full software, like Twinmotion or something like that for rendering, I think they're just kind of missing the point a little bit. So that's my opinion on this. Sorry, a little bit rambly, but I'd love to hear what you think. Do you think artificial intelligence at any point is going to replace programs like Twinmotion and Lumion and Inkscape? I just love having that conversation with you guys. As always, thank you so much for taking the time to watch this, and I'll catch you in the next video. Thanks, guys.